Good morning. This is Haley Solomon with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you are having a great week so far. We have another special guest today with us for our housing call. Before I jump into that awesome conversation, just want to give you two quick updates. Remember that we only have 1 week left to register for Bringing It Home, so don't miss this. It's the state's annual homelessness conference on June 4th through 5th in Raleigh. Space is filling up really fast, so make sure you register today. Registration closes this Friday, May 17th at 5 p.m. Also on May 17th, we will be having our final learning collaborative on housing barriers for justice-involved populations and those at risk of overdose from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. This is virtual. It is the sixth and final session where we are going to connect topics from all the previous sessions, as well as cover issues of housing for disabled populations and the movement around fair housing and housing justice in North Carolina. We will have both links for those events for you to register in the call notes. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our special guest, Alexandra Porter-Serrata. She's the Executive Director at the North Carolina Budget and Tax Center. Alexandra oversees the strategic direction of the organization, including the stewardship of its financial resources, the creation of trusted partnerships, and the leadership of a team of talented colleagues. Alexandra works to connect the dots across policy areas and identify opportunities for building the base of support for policies that will deliver better outcomes for all North Carolinians. Before joining the Budget and Tax Center, Alexandra worked at Action for Children NC, now NC Child, on economic security policy, and at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in the Community Affairs Department. Alexandra has experience at community-based and international non-governmental organizations in the areas of community development, asset building, and family economic security. Alexandra received a joint master's degree in international relations and public policy from the University of Chicago and studied anthropology at Haverford College. When she's not working, you will find Alexandra making prints and traveling with family. Welcome, Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about the revenue surplus that we recently learned about that the state has. Before we dive into that, can you just tell us a little bit about the North Carolina Budget and Tax Center?
Sure, absolutely. Again, it's great to be with you all. A little bit about our organization. The North Carolina Budget and Tax Center has been around for 30 years. And most recently, in the past 2 years, working as an independent nonprofit to ensure our budgets drive equitable investments that create opportunities for people across the state and communities across the state. We believe that the combination of research and analysis and trusting partnerships and connecting people to the policy process who have historically been excluded can drive the best outcomes for our state's future. We've been incredibly grateful for the partnership with NC Housing Coalition to understand what is going on in the field of affordable housing, what are the needs, what are the priorities, and the opportunity to deepen our partnership with all of you as housing advocates with unique insights and perspective is going to be a tremendous benefit for our work at the Budget and Tax Center as we really try to understand what's happening in our state and how can our policies best advance opportunity. So that's a little bit about our work. I will say, we are the Budget and Tax Center, so we also, when we think about budgets, and this is appropriate for today's conversation, we think a lot about the ways in which how we raise the revenue that we have enables us to make a collective commitment to well-being in our communities. So tax policy is an area of focus for our organization.
Perfect. Well, I think that was a perfect segue in talking about budgets and that particular focus. I'd really like to just open the floor to you to talk about what having a revenue surplus means, how we got here, this overall tax structure and what it's like in North Carolina, and what you think people need to know about it.
That's great. Thank you. I think the most important thing to walk away with from this conversation about the consensus revenue forecast that came out in April is that just because we have more revenue than we thought we were going to have, it doesn't mean we have what we need. So a lot of times when the Office of State Budget Management and the Fiscal Research Division release this announcement that what they expect our revenue collections to be as a state, there's a lot of conversation about how great the picture is when they can show that revenues are coming in above what was projected. But really, what we know is that North Carolina has a backlog of unmet needs, and for years has been shifting our tax code in pretty significant ways that consistently make it challenging to project over time what revenue will look like. And so there's been a very conservative approach to estimating what the projections of revenue will be. And there's been a lot going on in our economy. The COVID-19 pandemic downturn is one. The federal response, which boosted our revenue by stabilizing incomes and supporting people through that very difficult time. Those are two reasons why some of our numbers are coming out the way that they are. In the most recent story about the revenue picture for this year and next year, you'll have seen the number $1.4 billion tossed around. That's the dollars that are more than what was expected for both this fiscal year and next fiscal year. And those dollars, the analysts identified, are the result of income being stronger than was expected and consumer spending not falling off as much as maybe was expected. But I think one of the things that we know about these numbers is that looking over time, the growth in revenue is far below what we need in order to keep up with the needs in community. So when you look at these revenue numbers compared to how revenue has grown in the past, it's very concerning that in next year, from this year to next year, they'll only have growth of 0.7% in revenue from 2024 to 2025. That is far below the average annual growth in revenue, even under the tax cuts of 2014 to the most recent year. And so when that happens, I think we have to be really cautious about what celebrations are being made and really look, I think, Stephanie, to your point, to the broader problems with our tax structure right now. So for more than a decade, North Carolina legislators have been on a march towards zero income tax, both on the corporate and personal income tax side. That march right now means that by 2030, the corporate income tax will be completely eliminated in North Carolina, and a schedule of rate reductions on the personal income tax will bring the rate to as low as 2.49%. What this means, all told, when that fully goes into effect, is that the state will have an estimated $13 billion less in public money each year when all those changes go into effect. That's more than a third of our state's annual spending. And so I think in this moment when there's conversation about the additional funding that we have and the opportunities that it presents, we should absolutely pursue the investments that are urgent right now for community and make sure that all of those dollars go to the best investments that we know will make a positive impact on well-being. But we also have to, at the same time, be calling on our legislators to stop the income tax cuts. In 2025, the tax cuts will accelerate, and absent action by our legislative leaders, again, we'll have this very challenging context in which will continue to have fewer dollars than we would otherwise have had to meet so many of the needs in our community. So there's a tremendous opportunity right now to really make the case that the housing crisis in our state is real, that a long-term commitment to developing the affordable housing that communities and families need is got to be a priority, and that these dollars can go some way to making a down payment on that commitment. But again, absent changing the direction on the income tax cutting agenda of legislative leaders will not make the progress that we really need on housing and so many other issues. Excited to take any questions or be part of this conversation. I hope that gives you a sense of what we're dealing with when we talk about this revenue forecast and the state of our tax code.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate your time. I have one, I think, quick question for you. If you could tell us, what resources are available for advocates or interested parties to kind of follow along and stay up to date. You've already told us about the advocacy opportunities and what people can do in terms of reaching out to the legislator. What other resources are there for folks to stay informed?
Yeah, that's great. So our website, www.ncbudget.org, has a blog where there's different resources on the state of our tax code. We have a blog post on the revenue forecast that provides many of the numbers and background that I shared just now. We also have a deeper dive on the tax changes of recent years that can be a resource. The best those resources we hope will give you tools to start the conversation and make the connection between the taxes we raise and the priorities we have in community. We are also always available and work closely with Stephanie and the team at NC Housing Coalition to provide talking points and other materials that could be useful to you. So please do reach out if we can support on that. And Stephanie, I'll share some direct links with you. We also have a petition that we're running right now. It's at ncbudget.org/choose-communities. And this petition would call on legislators to keep the corporate income tax at the already low 2.5% and stop its elimination by 2030. So we would love to have folks sign on to that and share that out with your networks. So those are some resources we have, and we're always interested to hear from you about how we can support your work and your advocacy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alexandra, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And just to echo part of what you said, you've been an awesome partner as well. We've been able to do some great work, and I know I've learned a lot just in my brief time here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everyone. With our final 2 minutes of the housing call, I just want to list up a few updates. On the federal side, HUD is expanding solutions to tackle homelessness with housing vouchers. So yesterday, HUD announced that housing authorities can now request to accept self-certification of income to determine housing choice voucher program eligibility for people experiencing homelessness. This is a big deal because often folks experiencing homelessness, as many of you know, do not have the documents that they need for a variety of reasons. Moving on to state legislative updates, myself and several members of our policy team will be at the General Assembly next week on Wednesday, May 22nd. So stay tuned for more information about our visit, as well as a follow-up call to action that we will be sending out to you all. We are following several bills, and we have those listed in the call notes for you. Just wanted to remind folks that this Friday, May 17th, is a busy day. The CDBG Community Development Block Grant Mitigation Citizen Advisory Committee is having a public meeting at 12 p.m. at the Kinston-Lenoir County Public Library in Kinston, North Carolina. You can also register to attend virtually. So this public meeting will serve as a forum to inform folks about the different projects and programs going on. And committee members include representatives from various areas of North Carolina that are defined by HUD as the most impacted and distressed by Hurricanes Matthew and or Florence, as well as different representatives with relevant technical and industry experience. I also want to list up that the North Carolina Newsline recently spotlighted the work of our very own Hudson Vaughn and our Community Justice Collaborative. This is a project that supports historically Black communities and fights against displacement and gentrification. Hudson has been working closely with the Wake County Property Tax Working Group to help Black residents appeal their valuations. And in addition to the Housing Coalition, the working group includes community members and organizations such as the Men of Southeast Raleigh, Raleigh Village East, and the Biltmore Hills Neighborhood Association. So shout out to Hudson for the amazing work that he continues to do in those communities. We have several events, reports, and resources in the call notes for you all to check out. Again, remember, this is the last week to register for Bringing It Home. Don't miss out. It's going to be a great event. It's our first year back in person. And also remember that Friday, May 17th, is our last Learning Collaborative, that online webinar from 10 to 11 a.m. So links to register for both will be in the call notes. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you next time.